lot of what Gabby says carries into marriage and family. Um, so it's a good segue. Um, I got married when I was 25, which most people nowadays consider that way too young. But for me, it was perfect. I met my husband after college. I actually didn't get diagnosed with APS Type 1 until I was 21 in college. So I dealt with it most of my life without knowing what it was. And so when I was in college, much like Gabby said, I had a rough go of it and got my final diagnosis of pernicious anemia, and then I got diagnosed with APS Type 1. So college was rough, but I got through it. Met Roscoe. I moved right from college to Columbus, Ohio, to go to a grad school in Columbus, and met Roscoe through church. And so we dated a while and got married. One of the first things I thought of when I got married was, and this may seem silly, but who I put down as my emergency contact in my medical records. And I didn't put him down for many, many years. I still kept my mother, and that seemed a little awkward when I would explain, yes, I'm married, but no, he's not my emergency contact, partly because he couldn't recite my medications and dosages from memory, and he didn't know my complete medical background with symptoms. So I kept that for a while until recently, when I had post-cancer, I had to go to the ER for some complications, and my mom came with me, and I listened as they were asking her questions and realized she was not the most knowledgeable, and he was actually much more knowledgeable. So, and he stayed home. So I have since changed my emergency contact, but I have schooled. He has learned a lot of medical jargon. He could take all my nutrition exams and pass them with flying colors just from what we talk about. But he's gone a long way into learning all about APS Type 1. Day-to-day expectations. We did premarital counseling, but you don't talk about silly things like, are your vacations going to be, in the mountains, rock climbing, or he loves adventure, and he's Irish, so he doesn't like the sun. Our family vacations were always laying on the beach with a book, and I would always take lots and lots of naps. So we have very different expectations for our day-to-day excursions. He loves to go, and I love to just stare at the ceiling at times during the day. So we had to kind of merge through that. Budgeting. When you get married, you're on your own. Budgeting for medical expenses is not something that any of my friends had to deal with, but it is a large chunk of our expenses, and unfortunately it's becoming much larger with our healthcare situation in the United States. Spontaneity, we don't do a lot of things spontaneously because it doesn't work. I told him, I said, I need to plan our honeymoon because I need to know where we're going, and I need to know if we're near a hospital, and have to have all these medications with me. Where are we going to live? We always live near a big city, near a big university hospital, and that will always be how it is. We never want to. I never want to live out in a rural area, just because of our disease. These are things that you just think about when you get married. Should I, or am I feasibly able to work? This one was huge for me. I went into college wanting to be an endocrinologist, believe it or not. I love science, and I'm good at it, but I can't do it. I could never be a doctor. I could never handle that lifestyle, and that was a big struggle for me in college. So I chose the next best thing in my mind was nutrition, because I love nutrition, and you can work part-time as a dietitian easily enough. But then you also have to make decisions as you go. I first started working full-time and worked many, many hours. Before kids, I would work 50 to 60 hours a week, and loved it. I worked in a lab setting, so I worked in research. And as many of you know, research doesn't end at 5 p.m. Sometimes things go over and your cells don't know what time it is. So tissues can misbehave and you could be at the lab till 9 p.m. But I loved it and I was able to do it for a time. And then there came a time when I had to make a decision. This was not, I wasn't healthy anymore and I had to stop. So I have worked full-time, part-time, and no time. So I've done it all. But it's one of those things that kind of morphs. And then should we build a family? Can we build a family? And how should we build a family? I was never told I couldn't have kids. We always decided that we were going to adopt. When I got married, I had just come off of being diagnosed with pernicious anemia, and so I wanted to be healthy and present for my first child. So we chose adoption because we were going to adopt anyway. And I thought pregnancy would be very difficult on me health-wise. And so we adopted first. And that's Micah at 6 months when we adopted him. He is from Ethiopia, and he will tell you that with lots of pride and joy. He is an amazing little boy, very full of energy, and we love him. And then 3 years later, we were wondering what we should do next, and we got pregnant, surprisingly enough. We weren't trying to have children, but she was our little miracle. I did have a dream about her, and so we had been looking into domestic adoption, but my dream was actually that she was going to come through me. So her middle name is Ashlyn, which means dream or vision. So she came to us in January of 2012. And I'll tell you, my pregnancy was the best 9 months of my life. I felt the most healthy when I was pregnant that I've ever felt in my life. So that was a blessing. Family, this is probably the hardest thing for me, at least recently with the cancer. Setting priorities for the health of the family, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Who's going to work and how much? My husband, thank goodness, he could work all day and still work. He's a working machine. He loves to work. He's good at it. He has lots of energy. He can survive on not a lot of sleep. I need a ton of sleep. So he helped a lot with the midnight feedings, with the babies, both of them. He cooks. He's my chef. Even though I love to teach about nutrition, I don't love to cook. So he is the cook. He does a lot of the household duties. We actually live in a condo, so we don't have to mow the lawn. And then we have family rituals and routines to help us develop that sense of cohesiveness, because we have to choose what we can do, and we have learned that we have to say no. And that's probably the hardest thing is people invite us over for game night, and game night is going to go to midnight, and we have to say no. I can't stay up till midnight. So there are things that we have to say yes and say no to, and we cannot do too much. And that guarding against unrealistic expectations, and this is really, really hard. And I know many of you do this anyway. This is mommy guilt. We look on Facebook and we see all these other moms, and they post these fabulous lives. We all know it's not real, but they post, woke up at 8 a.m. and took my kids strawberry picking. And I'm thinking, by the grace of God, I woke up and got my coffee and was nice to my family. But, it can be difficult, and you have to, it's a mindset. The whole quality of life is always going to be a struggle, and it's always one of those things you deal with. Learn to live with the ups and downs. Plans are going to change. Your calcium may drop to 6, and you may not be able to go on that trip, and you have to go to the hospital and get stuck to an IV for a few days. But as our family tries, everybody else in my family is better than this than I am. It's no big deal. That's our family motto. It's no big deal. Learning to live with those ups and downs is good. And one thing that my mom always says to me is, you can't compare yourself to other moms. You have to know that you and your love for your family is enough. And I would tell parents, encourage your children as much as you can as they head out into the world, and as their mothers, Tell them they're doing a good job. Tell them how proud you are of them, because dealing with this disease is really difficult because of all the struggles personally, but then you don't want any of that burdened on your children, and you don't want them to carry any of it at all. So, boy, this is making me emotional. But she's always been there for me, and she always tells me, she comes in sometimes and just grabs my laundry without me knowing, and then brings it back folded and puts the kids' laundry away. Those little things, they help me a lot. And then I can go to bed early. Let's see. With a family, we really haven't talked to my children about anything medical until we had to, which was when I got diagnosed with cancer. They don't really understand what that word is, cancer. But they do know that I do not have a stomach. So I have a huge scar from here to here where I had a total gastrectomy where my entire stomach was removed. So they see that. So they know that, well, what's that? And so we tell them, Mommy doesn't have a stomach. Did it hurt when they took it out? Yeah, no, it doesn't hurt because they had me under medication. And are you sick? Why did they take it out? Yada, yada, yada. So we do have to talk about that, and unfortunately the last 2 years have been not very easy. Without a stomach makes, the cancer is gone, I'm cancer-free, but it's the APS Type 1 that is much more complicated now. So many more hospitalizations, disappearances from home. My daughter thinks that every large building is a hospital because that's all she knows, and when Mommy doesn't come home at night, she asks her daddy, is Mommy in the doctor room? When is Mommy coming home? And both of my children deal with each crises in a very different way. So you have to know your children's personality and work with dealing with their issues. And I guess I'm speaking to a lot of mothers too, and not people growing up with it. So I would say too, my parents and I'm very open with my parents about how my children are handling things, and they know how we treat my children in certain situations. And so we both work with, my parents are probably a second set of parents for my kids, because we both work the same way with my children during a crisis, and I'm very lucky to have them about 10 minutes from home, so they can take the kids on a whim, and I know that they're going to take care of their emotional needs as well as their physical needs when my husband has to continue to work. So with that, I think I will. One of our philosophies too is we do give age-appropriate answers. This is something we learned through adoption training, but we let our children lead the conversation. So a lot of times I'll want to keep talking, but then they might interject and say, can we go see if Pace is home? Or they're fine with certain, a certain simplicity of questions. So I leave it at that. And if anybody wants to ask questions, or I give my full consent to pass my name along, you can send emails to me. I'm on the Todd's email group, the Facebook group. I'd be happy to answer questions from mothers, grandparents, patients. And there's my beautiful family.